"Do not come to my wedding, Mom. I need you to understand that this day is no longer about you." Those were the words my daughter sent me 3 days before the wedding I had spent months helping prepare. I read the message twice, hoping I had misunderstood. But the words stayed the same. My name was no longer welcome on the guest list. My presence, the presence of the woman who had supported her through every difficult season of her life, had suddenly become something she wanted to avoid. My name is Margaret Whitmore, and I am 72 years old. For most of my life, I believed that family was the one place where you never had to question whether you belonged. I believed that the love between a mother and daughter was something permanent, something that could survive disagreements and changing circumstances. I never imagined that one day I would sit alone in my home in Connecticut, holding a phone in my hand, wondering how the little girl I raised had become someone who could send me a message like that. The wedding was supposed to be one of the happiest moments of Emily's life. I had watched her plan every detail. I knew how much the day meant to her. I also knew how much I had done behind the scenes to help make it possible. I had never expected praise. I had never kept a list of everything I had given. That was not how I loved my daughter. When my husband passed away years earlier, I promised myself that I would make sure Emily always had opportunities. I worked hard, saved carefully, and protected the future we had built together. Over time, those efforts allowed me to create financial security that most people only dream about. When Emily reached a major turning point in her life, I wanted to give her something meaningful. I wanted her to have stability. I wanted her to know that her mother believed in her. That was why I gave her a gift worth $17 million. To me, it was never just money. It represented years of sacrifice, years of planning, and years of love. I thought it would always remind her that no matter what happened, she had someone standing beside her. But somewhere along the way, something changed. The daughter who once called me for advice began calling only when she needed something. The daughter who once wanted me at every important moment began creating distance. At first, I made excuses for her. I told myself she was busy. I told myself wedding stress was overwhelming. I told myself that every family goes through difficult periods. Mothers are good at finding reasons to forgive the people they love. But this message felt different. It was not just about a wedding invitation. It was about the realization that I had slowly been moved from a loved member of my daughter's life to someone she considered inconvenient. I sat in my living room that evening and looked around at the memories we had created together. The photographs, the family traditions, the years of moments I thought would always matter. I did not feel anger. I felt something much deeper. I felt disappointment. Not because I was excluded from a celebration, but because I wondered whether my daughter had forgotten the person who helped her reach that moment. The next morning, I did something I had never done before. I did not call Emily to argue. I did not beg her to change her mind. I did not ask why I was no longer welcome. Instead, I quietly opened the documents I had kept safely for years. I looked at the gift I had given her, the $17 million that was meant to represent love and security. And for the first time, I asked myself a question I had avoided for too long. Had I given my daughter a gift because I loved her, or had I allowed my love to become something she no longer valued? I knew one thing for certain. I was not going to ruin her wedding. I was not going to create a scene. I was not going to respond with anger. But I was finally ready to make a decision about my own dignity. Because sometimes the most important thing you can take back is not money. It is your understanding of your own worth. After reading my daughter's message, I spent the entire night thinking about one question. When did my love become something she expected instead of something she appreciated? I kept returning to that thought because the truth was, the wedding invitation was not the beginning of the problem. It was simply the moment when I could no longer ignore what had been happening for years. Looking back, I could see the small changes that I had tried to overlook. I remembered when Emily was young and how she would run through the front door after school, excited to tell me every detail of her day. I remembered the years when she needed me for everything. I was the person she called when she was worried, the person she trusted when she needed advice, and the person she turned to whenever life became uncertain. Being her mother was never a burden. It was the greatest privilege of my life. After losing my husband, I focused even more on creating security for Emily. I knew I could not replace the support a father provides, but I wanted her to know she would always have someone protecting her future. I worked carefully with my finances and made decisions that would benefit her for many years. The $17 million gift was not something I gave impulsively. It was something I planned with love and intention. I wanted Emily to start her new chapter without the financial worries that had affected so many people. When I handed that gift to her, I remember the look on her face. She hugged me and told me she would never forget what I had done. At that moment, I believed we shared the same understanding. I believed she saw the love behind the gift. But over time, the meaning of that gift seemed to change. Emily became more focused on the life she was building and the people she wanted to impress. I noticed that my calls became shorter. Our conversations became less personal. The daughter who once asked about my thoughts began making decisions without considering how they affected me. I try not to take it personally. I told myself that adults create their own lives, and mothers must learn when to step back. That was true. I never wanted to control Emily's choices. I only wanted to feel like I still had a place in her life. As the wedding approached, I noticed that I was included less and less. At first, I thought it was simply because Emily was overwhelmed with planning. Weddings can be stressful, and I wanted to give her space. But then I noticed something that hurt more than I expected. She was not just busy. She was creating distance. There were conversations I was no longer part of. Decisions I learned about after they were already made. Moments where I felt like a stranger looking into my own daughter's life. Still, I stayed quiet. That was the role I had always played. I was the mother who understood. The mother who forgave. The mother who found reasons for other people's behavior. But the message telling me not to attend the wedding forced me to see something clearly. I had spent so much time protecting Emily's feelings that I had ignored my own. That evening, I opened the old photo albums in my living room. I looked at pictures of Emily as a child, pictures of family holidays, and memories from years when we were inseparable. I did not look at them with bitterness. I looked at them with sadness because I realized how much had changed. But sadness does not mean weakness. Sometimes sadness is the moment when you finally accept the truth. The next day, I contacted my financial advisor. I did not do it out of anger. I did not do it because I wanted Emily to suffer. I did it because I needed to understand the choices I had made and protect my own future. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to think about what I needed. I had spent decades making sure my daughter had everything she wanted. Now I needed to ask whether I had forgotten something important. Had I taught Emily that my love had no limits? Or had I accidentally taught her that my feelings did not matter? That question stayed with me, and I knew the answer would determine what I did next. For the first time in many years, I stopped making decisions based only on what Emily needed. I started asking myself what was fair for both of us. That was not an easy change for me because being a mother had always been the center of my life. I had spent decades believing that a parent's love meant giving without expecting anything in return. But I was beginning to understand that love and self-respect could exist together. I could love my daughter deeply and still recognize when something was hurting me. After speaking with my financial advisor, I learned more about the details surrounding the gift I had given Emily. I had never paid close attention to the legal structure because I never imagined I would need to. My intention had always been simple. I wanted to help my daughter build a secure future. I never wanted control over her life. I never wanted her to feel like she owed me anything. But I also never imagined that one day I would need to protect myself from being forgotten. As I reviewed the documents, I discovered that there were protections I had placed in the agreement years earlier. They were not created because I expected conflict. They were created because my advisor had encouraged me to think carefully about such a large financial decision. At the time, I thought those protections were simply good planning. Now, they represented something different. They represented a reminder that my own future mattered too. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time that afternoon, looking through the papers and thinking about Emily. I did not feel satisfied. I did not feel like I had won anything. In fact, I felt a deep sadness because I wished things had never reached that point. Money was never the reason I gave Emily that gift. The reason was love. The reason was family. I wanted my daughter to understand that. But I also needed to understand something myself. Love should never require you to ignore your own dignity. A few days later, I received another message from Emily. She asked if I had reconsidered coming to the wedding. Her tone was different from before. It was not as direct or cold. I wondered if she expected me to apologize or ask for another chance to attend. For years, I would have immediately tried to fix everything. I would have written a long message explaining how much I loved her and asking what I could do differently. But this time, I paused before responding. I wanted my words to come from a place of calm, not fear. I wrote back that I respected her decision and that I hoped her wedding day would be beautiful. I did not argue. I did not mention the gift. I did not try to make her feel guilty. I simply allowed her to experience the consequences of creating distance between us. That was one of the hardest things I had ever done. A mother naturally wants to protect her child from pain, even when that child has caused her own pain. But sometimes protecting someone means allowing them to understand the impact of their choices. A few days before the wedding, I received a call from a family member who had heard about the situation. They asked if I was really going to stay away. They said Emily was under pressure and that maybe I should just let it go. I listened politely. For years, I had been the person everyone expected to compromise. I had been the person who kept the peace. But I finally realized that peace should not come at the cost of losing yourself. I told them that I loved Emily and that I wanted nothing but happiness for her. But I also said that I needed to respect myself. After the call ended, I felt something unexpected. I felt peaceful, not because the situation was fixed. It was not. Not because the hurt disappeared. It had not. But because I finally knew I was making a decision from strength instead of fear. The wedding was approaching. My daughter was preparing for one of the biggest days of her life. And I was preparing for something different. I was preparing to stand quietly by my own values. I did not know what would happen next. I did not know how Emily would react when she discovered the changes I had made. But I knew one thing. I had spent years giving my daughter everything I could. Now it was time to remember that I was someone worth protecting too. The morning of Emily's wedding arrived quietly. I woke up earlier than usual, even though I had no plans to attend the ceremony. For many years, I had imagined this day differently. I pictured myself helping my daughter with the final details, taking photographs together, and watching her begin a new chapter surrounded by the people who loved her most. Instead, I sat in my home with a cup of coffee, reminding myself that love does not disappear simply because someone chooses distance. I still wanted Emily to be happy. I still wanted her marriage to succeed. But I also knew I could not ignore the way I had been treated. That morning, I received several messages from relatives asking if I was sure about staying home. Some believed I should put my feelings aside because it was Emily's special day. They did not understand that this decision was not about refusing to support my daughter. It was about accepting that I was no longer welcome. There is a difference between choosing not to attend and being asked not to come. For years, I had taught Emily that family should be built on kindness and understanding. Now I had to show her that those values also applied to me. While the wedding was taking place, I spent the afternoon looking through old memories. I found pictures of Emily as a little girl, wearing a bright smile as she held my hand. I found photographs from school events, birthdays, and family vacations. Those memories reminded me that my relationship with my daughter had once been filled with warmth. That was why the situation hurt so much. The pain was not caused by missing a single event. It came from feeling like years of love and support had become invisible. After the wedding ended, I expected silence. I expected Emily to be too busy to contact me. But later that evening, my phone rang. It was Emily. I looked at the screen for several seconds before answering. A part of me wanted to hear her voice. Another part of me was afraid that the conversation would bring more disappointment. When I answered, there was a long pause. "Mom," she said quietly, "I did not expect you to actually stay away." Her words surprised me. I had respected the boundaries she created, but it seemed she had not expected me to accept it. "Emily," I said calmly, "you asked me not to come. I respected your choice." She became quiet. I could tell she was thinking. For the first time in a long time, I was not trying to convince her of my love. I was simply allowing her to understand my position. "I thought you would be angry," she said. I told her I was not angry. I was hurt, but I was not interested in fighting. Anger would not repair our relationship. Honest understanding was the only way forward. Then Emily asked a question I did not expect. "Is this about the gift?" I took a deep breath. I had hoped we could talk about our relationship before discussing money, but I knew this conversation had to happen eventually. "No," I told her. "This is not about money. The gift was never the most important thing I gave you." I explained that the $17 million represented my love and my belief in her future. But the most valuable thing I had always offered was my support, my time, and my presence. Those were the things I wanted her to understand. Emily did not have an immediate answer. And honestly, I did not expect one. Some lessons take time. Some realizations do not happen in a single conversation. Before we ended the call, I told her that I loved her and that I hoped she had a beautiful wedding day. But I also told her something I had never said before. "Emily, loving you does not mean I have to forget my own worth." After I hung up, I sat quietly for a while. The situation was still painful, and there were still many unanswered questions. But for the first time, I felt that my voice had been heard. I was no longer the mother who silently accepted everything to keep peace. I was a woman who loved her daughter, but who also understood that respect had to exist in every relationship. In the days after Emily's wedding, I noticed something had changed. Not in my daughter, at least not immediately, but in myself. For the first time in many years, I was no longer trying to repair everything before understanding what was truly broken. I was allowing myself to sit with the reality of what had happened. I had spent so much of my life believing that a mother's job was to protect her child from every disappointment. But I was beginning to understand that sometimes the greatest lesson a parent can give is allowing their child to see the results of their own choices. I did not want Emily to feel punished. I wanted her to understand. Those two things were very different. A few weeks after the wedding, I received another call from Emily. This time, her voice sounded less defensive. She did not immediately bring up the gift or the wedding. Instead, she asked how I was doing. It was a simple question, but it meant more than she probably realized. For months, I had felt like our conversations had become centered around what I could provide. Hearing my daughter ask about me as a person felt like a small step toward rebuilding something we had lost. We talked for a while, carefully choosing our words. I could tell she wanted to say something, but was struggling to find the right way. Finally, she admitted that the wedding had not felt the way she imagined. She said she had been overwhelmed by trying to create a perfect day and had allowed other people's opinions to influence her decisions. She did not make excuses, but she began explaining how she had convinced herself that creating distance from me would make things easier. I listened quietly. I understood that many people make mistakes when they are focused on appearances or trying to meet expectations. But understanding someone's reasons does not erase the impact of their actions. Emily, I said, I know you wanted your wedding day to be special. I wanted that for you too. But I need you to understand that I was not just a guest you could remove from a list. I am your mother. There was silence on the phone. Then Emily said something that surprised me. I think I forgot that. Those words were painful, but they were also honest. Sometimes honesty is the beginning of healing because it allows people to finally acknowledge what they have avoided. We continued talking about the gift as well. Emily admitted that she had started seeing the $17 million as part of the life she was building rather than as an expression of my love. She said she had become so focused on her future that she stopped thinking about the person who helped make that future possible. I appreciated her honesty, but I also wanted her to understand something important. Emily, the money was never the reason I loved you. It was never the reason I supported you. If I had never been able to give you anything financially, I would still have been your mother. She became quiet again. I know that now, she said. I hope she meant it. But I also knew that rebuilding trust would take more than one conversation. Words could open the door, but actions would determine whether we could truly move forward. Around that time, I began making changes in my own life. I continued spending time with friends, enjoying my hobbies, and creating a routine that was not built entirely around my daughter. It felt strange at first, but it was also freeing. I realized that my life had value beyond what I could give to someone else. One afternoon, I visited a local garden center and spent several hours choosing flowers for my backyard. It was a simple activity, but I remember feeling peaceful. For years, I had focused on building a future for Emily. Now I was finally creating a future for myself. The relationship between a mother and daughter is complicated. It carries years of memories, expectations, and emotions. I knew one difficult moment would not erase all the love we had shared. But I also knew that love alone could not repair what respect had damaged. Emily needed to understand that I was not withdrawing my love. I was simply refusing to disappear inside it. The gift I had given her represented years of sacrifice. But the lesson I was learning represented something even more valuable. A person can give everything they have to the people they love, but they should never give away their own identity in the process. As the weeks passed, I began to notice that rebuilding my relationship with Emily required something I had never practiced before: patience. For years, I had been the person who rushed to fix problems. If Emily was unhappy, I tried to make things better. If there was tension in the family, I tried to remove it. I believed that a mother's love meant making difficult situations disappear. But this time, I understood that healing could not be forced. Both of us needed time to understand what had happened and what needed to change. One Sunday afternoon, Emily came to my house for the first time in several weeks. I noticed something different when she walked through the door. She was quieter than usual, not because she was angry, but because she seemed to be thinking deeply. We sat together in the living room where I had spent many years watching her grow up. It was the same room where she had shared childhood stories with me, where we had celebrated birthdays, and where we had talked about her dreams for the future. Seeing her there reminded me that our relationship was built on much more than one painful moment. "Mom," she said after a long silence, "I have been thinking about everything." I listened carefully. I realize now that I was so focused on creating the wedding I imagined that I stopped thinking about the people who helped me get there. Those words meant something because they showed awareness. Not perfection, but awareness. I did not expect Emily to suddenly understand every feeling I had experienced. I only wanted her to recognize that my feelings mattered too. She told me that after the wedding, several people had asked about me. Some family members had noticed that I was missing. Some had asked why I was not there. She said those questions made her realize that excluding me had been a bigger decision than she originally understood. I listened as she explained that she had been influenced by the idea of creating a certain image. She wanted everything to look perfect. She wanted approval from people who were watching. But in trying to create a perfect day, she had hurt the person who had supported her through imperfect ones. I told her that I understood wanting a special wedding. Every bride dreams of a meaningful celebration. But I also told her that a beautiful event should never require someone to feel forgotten. Emily looked down and quietly apologized. It was not a dramatic apology. There were no excuses. There were no attempts to change the subject. It was simply a daughter acknowledging that she had hurt her mother. I accepted her apology, but I also explained that rebuilding trust would take time. Forgiveness was not the same as pretending nothing happened. Forgiveness meant choosing to move forward while still remembering the lesson. During our conversation, Emily asked about the gift again. She asked if I had truly changed the arrangements. I answered honestly. I told her that I had reviewed everything and made decisions based on what was best for my future. I reminded her that the gift had always been given from love, but love did not mean I stopped being responsible for myself. She listened carefully. "I think I understand now," she said. "You were not trying to take something away from me. You were trying to remind both of us that our relationship cannot be built on what you provide." Hearing that from her was meaningful because it showed she finally understood the difference between a gift and an obligation. A gift should come from love. It should never become a reason for someone to stop showing appreciation. After Emily left that evening, I sat in my favorite chair and reflected on everything that had happened. I realized that sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones that teach us the most about ourselves. I had spent years teaching Emily how to be independent and confident. Now, without realizing it, I was teaching her another important lesson. Family relationships require care from both sides. Love must be protected by respect. And even the strongest bonds need honesty to survive. I still loved my daughter. That had never changed. But I had finally learned that loving someone does not mean losing yourself in the process. After my conversation with Emily, I realized something important. Rebuilding a relationship does not mean returning to the way things were before. Sometimes, the strongest relationships are not the ones that never face challenges. They are the ones where people are willing to learn from those challenges and create something healthier afterward. For many years, Emily and I had a relationship built on love, but it was also built on an imbalance. I gave because I loved her. She received because she believed that was simply what mothers did. Neither of us had stopped to ask whether that balance was still healthy. Now, we were both learning a different way to love each other. In the months that followed, I noticed small but meaningful changes in Emily. She began calling just to talk, not because she needed advice or assistance. She started asking about my plans, my interests, and the things happening in my life. Those conversations reminded me of the daughter I remembered from years ago, the little girl who wanted to know everything about the world around her. But I also knew that rebuilding trust required more than a few phone calls. It required consistency. It required effort. One afternoon, Emily invited me to her home for dinner. This time, the invitation felt different. It was not connected to an event, a request, or a problem that needed solving. She simply wanted to spend time with me. When I arrived, she welcomed me warmly and showed me the effort she had made preparing the evening. It reminded me of all the years I had done similar things for her. But now, I was not there as someone responsible for making everything perfect. I was there as her mother. During dinner, Emily brought up something that surprised me. She said she had been talking with her husband about the way they viewed family relationships. She admitted that they had both become too focused on appearances and expectations. They had spent so much time thinking about what others would think that they forgot about the people who truly cared about them. I listened carefully because I knew that realization was not easy. Many people struggle to admit when they have allowed outside opinions to influence their decisions. I thought having a beautiful wedding meant everything had to look perfect, Emily said. But I realize now that a perfect day means nothing if you hurt the people who love you. Those words touched me, not because they erased the past, but because they showed growth. I told Emily that I was proud of her for recognizing that. Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is whether someone has the courage to learn from them. Later that evening, we looked through some old photographs together. We laughed at memories from years ago. We talked about family vacations, holidays, and moments we had almost forgotten. It reminded me that one painful chapter does not define an entire relationship. There was still a history of love between us. There were still countless moments that mattered. But we also understood that moving forward meant creating new memories based on mutual respect. Around that time, I made another decision about my own life. I began focusing more on my own dreams and interests. I joined a community group, spent more time with friends, and planned trips I had always wanted to take. For years, I had waited for the perfect time to prioritize myself. I finally realized that there would never be a perfect time. Sometimes you have to choose yourself while still loving the people around you. When Emily learned about my plans, she smiled and said she was happy to see me enjoying my life. That meant a lot because it showed that she no longer saw my independence as distance. She saw it as something healthy. The $17 million gift had started this difficult conversation, but I understood now that the real value was never in the money. The true lesson was about appreciation, boundaries, and understanding that love should never make someone feel invisible. Emily and I were not going back to the relationship we had before. We were building something new, something more honest, something where love existed alongside respect. And for the first time in a long time, I felt that my daughter was not only hearing my words, she was finally understanding them. As time passed, I began to understand that the most meaningful part of this journey was not what I had taken back, but what I had gained. I had gained a clearer understanding of myself. I had gained a healthier relationship with my daughter. And most importantly, I had learned that love does not require someone to lose their own voice. For years, I believed that being a good mother meant always putting my child first, no matter the cost. I believed that if I gave enough, supported enough, and sacrificed enough, my family would always understand my intentions. But life taught me something different. Love needs balance. It needs appreciation. It needs two people who are willing to care about each other's feelings. Emily and I continued rebuilding our relationship one conversation at a time. There were still moments when things felt uncomfortable. There were still topics that required patience. But the difference was that we no longer avoided difficult conversations. We faced them with honesty. That change alone meant more to me than anything else. One afternoon, Emily asked me to join her for a walk through a nearby park. It was something simple, something we had done many times when she was younger. As we walked together, she told me she had been thinking about the kind of relationship she wanted us to have moving forward. I do not want us to go back to how things were, she said. I want us to have something better. I appreciated those words because I felt the same way. Going backward would have meant returning to a relationship where I gave too much and she expected too much. Moving forward meant creating something new, something based on mutual understanding. We talked about the years before the wedding, about the moments when I felt forgotten and the moments when she felt overwhelmed. We both realized that the distance between us had grown slowly. It was not created by one decision alone. It came from many small moments where we failed to communicate honestly. That realization helped me let go of some of the sadness I carried. I understood that Emily was not trying to erase my importance. She was trying to create a life of her own, but lost sight of the people who helped her get there. I also recognized my own mistakes. I had spent so many years making everything easy for her that I never taught her that relationships require effort from both sides. Sometimes, when we love people deeply, we accidentally prevent them from understanding the value of what we provide. By always being available, I had allowed my support to become something expected instead of something appreciated. That was a lesson for both of us. The decision about the $17 million gift remained a reminder of that lesson. I did not view it as a weapon or a way to control Emily. It was a decision about responsibility and the importance of protecting my own future. Emily eventually understood that. She told me that at first she thought I was trying to take something away from her. But later, she realized I was trying to protect something much more important. Our relationship. I thought the gift was the biggest thing you gave me, she said. But now I know it was never about the money. It was about your love. Hearing that meant more than any financial decision ever could. Because that was the truth I wanted her to understand from the beginning. The value of a mother's love cannot be measured in dollars. It is measured in years of support, memories, and sacrifices that often go unnoticed. I continued building my own life as well. I traveled more, spent time with friends, and enjoyed the freedom of making choices for myself. Emily encouraged me to do these things because she finally understood that my happiness mattered too. Our relationship became stronger because we were no longer connected by obligation. We were connected by genuine care. Looking back, I realized that the most difficult moments in life sometimes reveal the most important truths. The wedding situation caused pain, but it also created an opportunity for growth. It forced both of us to examine what family really means. Family is not just about sharing a last name. It is not just about being present during celebrations. Family is about respect, understanding, and the willingness to see each other as complete individuals. I never wanted my daughter to lose something valuable. I wanted her to understand the value of what she already had, a mother who loved her, a relationship worth protecting, and a lesson that would stay with both of us for the rest of our lives. Years after the wedding that changed everything, I often found myself thinking about the lesson hidden inside that painful chapter of my life. At the time, I believed I was losing my daughter. I believed the distance between us might become permanent. But looking back now, I understand that sometimes relationships need to be challenged before they can become stronger. What I thought was the end of our bond became the beginning of a more honest one. Emily and I never forgot what happened. We did not pretend that the hurt was never there. Instead, we chose to learn from it. That choice made all the difference. I am 72 years old now, and I see life differently than I did when I was younger. When you spend decades caring for others, it is easy to forget that you are also a person with dreams, needs, and feelings. I spent so many years being Emily's mother that I sometimes forgot how important it was to simply be Margaret, the woman who enjoyed quiet mornings, long walks, conversations with friends, and the simple happiness of creating a life that belonged to me. The $17 million gift was once the center of a painful disagreement, but it became something much more meaningful. It became a reminder that love should be freely given, not silently expected. It became a reminder that generosity is beautiful, but generosity without appreciation can create misunderstandings. Emily eventually told me that the situation changed the way she viewed family. She said she learned that the people who support you during your journey should never become invisible once you reach your destination. Hearing that from my daughter brought me a peace I had been searching for. Not because I needed her to admit she was wrong, but because I wanted her to understand the importance of gratitude. We still have conversations about the past sometimes. We talk about the wedding, the difficult days afterward, and the emotions we both carried. But those conversations no longer create distance between us. They remind us of how far we have come. I believe every family has moments they wish they could handle differently. No one gets every decision right. No one communicates perfectly all the time. What matters is whether people are willing to recognize their mistakes and choose a better path forward. Emily and I learned that forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It means understanding. It means accepting that people can make mistakes and still have the ability to grow. It means choosing love while also respecting yourself. Today, when I spend time with Emily, I no longer wonder whether she values me. I see it in her actions. I see it in the way she checks on me, includes me in her life, and remembers that our relationship matters. Those things are worth more than any financial gift could ever be. If I could go back to the day I received that message, I would still feel the same sadness. I would still wish things had happened differently. But I would also tell my younger self something important. Do not be afraid to stand up for your own worth. Setting boundaries does not mean you love someone less. Sometimes it is the very thing that allows love to survive. My daughter once thought the greatest gift I gave her was financial security. But now, We both know the greatest gift was the lesson we learned together. Love without respect is incomplete. Family without appreciation becomes fragile. And a person's value should never be measured only by what they provide for others. The most important thing I ever took back was not money. It was my understanding that I mattered too. And in finding that truth, I found something even more valuable than the gift I had given away. I found peace.